Soviet system was doomed to fail. It was predicted by Austrian economists as far back as 1912 by Mises that socialism can't work because you lose your pricing structure. Without the pricing structure, you don't know what supply and demands are. You get malinvestment, you get too much debt, and all these problems of inflation. So, but he said that it would fail, and it did. So, as terrible as the Cold was with the confrontation of thousands of missiles, the Soviets had 30,000 and we had nearly as many as well, and it was very, very dangerous. But we didn't have to fight it with a nuclear exchange. Here today we are intimidated by a third world country that has no army of sorts and no navy, no air force, no intercontinental ballistic missiles, no nuclear weapons, and we were ready to go to war because someday, someplace they might get a nuclear weapon, and yet we stood the Soviets down. I would say that we shouldn't be so easily intimidated. Now the Soviets were defeated for a very precise reason. For economic reasons, they overextended themselves, which empires almost inevitably do. They overextend themselves, they spend themselves into bankruptcy, and their economic system collapses. Now, bin Laden had a precise plan to get us more involved in the Middle East by sending individuals over here to cause harm, because he thought that we might then take the bait and go over there and occupy at least one Muslim country. Of course, how many countries are we in now? We can't even count them. There's so many. His plan was to get us involved in one country and get us bogged down in the war over there. His other plan was to cause dissent in this country. He was, I'm sure, thinking about the dissent of the 1960s of the Vietnam War. But the other plan that he had was to bankrupt our country by overextending ourselves overseas. And here we have done exactly what he was looking for us to do, and we have sacrificed another 8,500 Americans, 40,000 Americans severely wounded, hundreds of thousands begging and pleading for help at the Veterans Administration. We have an epidemic of suicides with our military, more people dying from suicide than we do from combat. So we're not winning this war because we're not willing to take and look at what the CIA has told us and taught us. They said, be careful what we do. Not only are there unintended consequences with our foreign policy, but watch out, there will be blowback and we will suffer the consequences. This is the reason why we have to come to our senses and change our foreign policy to national defense and not world domination. The intellectual revolution is well in place. There was an intellectual revolution prior to our first revolution that lasted probably 100 years. And the founders were well versed in history. They knew about the Magna Carta. They knew about Old Testament history. They knew the dangers of kings. So they were well versed about property rights. And finally there was a political action, which was the revolution and the writing of the Constitution. Well, today the intellectual revolution is much more successful than what we see in Washington. This has been going on for 30 or 40 years. It's been quiescent, but it has been now bearing fruit today with this generation, because it is this generation that has required that we bring forth in a presidential election for the first time since the Fed was started, that the Federal Reserve is an issue in this presidential election. But the intellectual revolution now is in place, and we're reacting to that, and I think that's the hard work. But we are further along than I ever dreamed. Let me tell you, I always worked on the assumption that maybe I could vote and try to set my standard the best I can, and maybe somebody in later years would look and say, yeah, I think he understood what was going on. But believe me, the revolution is alive and well and growing by leaps and bounds. Looks like truly it is an idea whose time has come, and armies will not stop us, nor will the government stop us.